Welcome to the first video in the Woodsmanship series. This video series is going to focus on scouting whitetails and the tips, tricks, and tactics that we've used to be successful throughout the years. This is not only going to focus on us. We're going to be working with folks like Nathan Killen, Alan Altizer, Heath Jolly from Budget Bucks Outdoors, and others to bring some tactics to you that might make you a better whitetail hunter this fall. If you like what you see, as always, go down there, hit that subscribe button, and be sure to check out the people that we have tagged on here. Today we're working with Heath Jolly. This is the first episode. We're going to be focused on mountain buck bedding, but it can be translated just to buck bedding, and it will probably work for all the way across the country. I can promise you it works in places like Ohio because it's tactics we've used all the time. So again, hope you enjoy, hope you find something you can use, and let us know what you think in the comments below. And again,
what do you boys think?
I think it's a good day for scouting. Yeah. I've been stuck inside for 2 weeks.
Me too. So we just met at the Bojangles. Does anybody meet anywhere else, or is that pretty much?
No, it's the standard.
That's pretty much the standard. I think it's in the Bible somewhere. If you're gonna meet Bojangles, Book of Jericho. Just kidding. There's no Book of Jericho. But no, we're gonna jump in the truck here and go meet Ethan out of his house, and then we're gonna try to. It's blowing some snow. I think it's like 20 degrees. Feels like 5. Awesome scouting weather. That's what I told Ethan. Better than 75 and sweating the whole time. So
it keeps you moving, right?
Yeah, gonna keep us moving good. So anyways, we're gonna jump up here, go see what we can do, and we're in North Carolina now, but we ain't gonna be in North Carolina long. We're going to the volunteer state, see if we can find a spurt. So stick with us, we'll make it happen.
It does.
Not today. So we got to our first spot this morning, and it's pretty cold. It ain't bad. It's in the 20s. But it's not going to be too bad, I don't think. We found a place to park. That's kind of the trouble we've been looking at on the maps, is kind of finding some access. And we think this is going to be okay just based on the locations of the posted signs and the gate and all. So we'll see. Well, heck, you know, we had to walk a long way to start finding sign, probably 40 yards at least. Good start.
Good. This is a good example of mountain buck bedding. You got a trail coming in along the main ridge here, so he can monitor all the human activity coming off the private land, and then he's got the wind at his back, the main wind at this thicket at his back right here. He can watch this bottom in front of him, and there's 2 doe trails coming around below him right here. Now he can't scent check the does from here, but he can watch them funnel through, so he can get up and go mess with them a little bit and then come back and lay down if he wants to. Now, it's not something he's using all the time, but you can tell he's used it some, so this is probably rut-based bedding. Yeah.
All right, so rut-based bedding, that is some different terminology that maybe I haven't heard on the mainstream as much. Heath, why don't you tell us a little bit, maybe just a definition of rut-based bedding and kind of what that means?
In my definition would be, I guess, the bedding that they're using when the rut's kicking in right there at the 1st of November, that's got some good security cover, but that they can, it's near a social hub of activity where they can monitor the does. So in beds like that, you got usually doe trails coming by within 30, 40 yards, you know, by that bed where he can monitor when the does are coming in heat. And he's not right on top of the doe bedding, but he's near the doe bedding. He's monitoring the rest of the deer in the herd through right there, through wind and sight and smell, you know, during that short couple weeks there in November when he's having to look for a doe in heat, you know.
So think about, like what we were saying earlier, this is the kind of place where you can kill that buck. You know, you put a trail camera on that road, you're going to get a lot of pictures 3 and off in the morning. But stuff like this, you know, late October, November, you can kill that buck doing this kind of thing. You also got to think about with this is access. So Heath immediately said down there he probably wouldn't kill this buck right here in the morning for several different reasons, but maybe in the evening, because you can come, you know, you're kind of terrain masking coming off this side, and if he's, you know, whatever the case, in the morning he's probably already here. You know, it's not going to happen just because of access. But this is the kind of place that we're talking about, and we say it, say it all the time, and they're on these videos. The buck is here in daylight, whereas he's at your camera at 2 o'clock in the morning, 300 to 400 yards on the edge of that field. And a lot of people get hung up on that sign, and of course there's sign here too, but that sign is great and all, but you're going to spend most of your season sitting there going, well, maybe it'll be in daylight today, maybe it'll be in daylight today, and a lot of times it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, he's going to know he's being hunted.
It's definitely not going to happen. Another question we get asked a lot, how do you know a bed is a buck bed and not a doe bed? So talk about that a minute, Heath.
Well, this one's kind of obvious.
Right.
He's rubbed the tree right here, but most of the buck beds I find, one, they'll have buck droppings around them. So any large clumped droppings I consider buck droppings, because everywhere I find buck beds, that's the kind of droppings that are there. I've heard that's controversial, that you can't tell a deer by its droppings, but I'd have to dispute that. Anyways, but like right here, there are no other beds anywhere. So, there are does that hang out alone. I don't know if they'll do that their whole life, but there are does that'll bed by themselves, but usually a buck is bedded by himself. Now, I've seen lots of situations where 2 big deer will bed together in an area, but you won't have 3 or 4 small beds all facing around each other. Does will bed kind of circular, watching each other's back. Right here, he's got the wind coming to his back from across the ridge right here, and he's monitoring these heavy trails coming down here below him, and you just don't see does doing that.
So this is one of those areas that I talked about being just like a dead zone that you mark off pretty much immediately. We're walking through it right now to get somewhere we want to go, but I'm trying to claw through the thicket. The reason it's a dead zone is it's just a big bowl. If you step back and look at it, there's a little rise in here, but it's just a bowl. Everything surrounds it. It's higher. And there's a lot of deer sign here, there's rubs, there's a lot of deer tracks crossing. But what's going to happen is, just like Heath was talking about, your thermals come in, or your thermals are going to sink and pull down in here, and then when the wind starts blowing around, your scent's just going to circle this bowl, and it's bulletproof. But you'll see this kind of thing right here a lot. Pretty good size rub for our area, but anyways, just a real good spot to cross off. It don't matter what it looks like, forget it. You ain't gonna kill a buck here. You ain't gonna kill anything here, I don't think, unless they just come running through and don't have time to smell you. But we're heading up to a saddle now that a lot of this sign's coming from, and see if we can't find some more good stuff. Man, I've learned a lot already. I love it. I love every minute of it. All right, so we're a long way back in here. I don't know how far we are.
Good half mile now.
Yeah, we're a good ways back, and it's nasty. And we came up just to kind of give you a direction. Down there is the fields that had all the sign that we originally started. About halfway up was the first bed that we looked at. We crossed a nasty ditch drainage and came straight up the back side of this, and it's super, super, super thick. So thick that it's impossible almost to get through. Makes you wonder if anything's going through it, but Heath proved it was. So what this is it's just, I don't know what you call this, a knob?
It's kind of a little flat below the knob.
Yeah.
I don't know what you call it besides just a bench on the side of the mountain right here.
Yeah.
And there's a giant laurel thicket right here behind us. We're kind of at the edge of the laurel thicket. We're like 40 yards from it. There's a ton of buck sign coming in and out of that laurel thicket right there. So that's what made me walk over here and look for beds, because it's really too thick for him to be bedding back there in that nasty laurel thicket. So I figured he'd be right here on this point somewhere, and I walked around enough, and sure enough found this bed here. Now, it's not obviously a buck bed by looking at it. There's no rubs right here at the bed, but if you back up, there's rubs within 20 yards of it. There is several wind directions he can bed right here on. We were just saying it's perfect for a north wind.
It's going to be leeward on a north wind.
Right. So it's perfect for that. You can't sneak up in here on him.
No.
This bed is here for
Bulletproof.
safety reasons. He can live his entire life right here on this little point right here, and never be killed by anybody if he stays put during daylight hours.
Right.
You can't sneak in here on him. You
Yeah.
know, unless you cut a trail to get up in here.
Right.
There's no way to get in here on him, and I dare you to even try to get a shot in here on him, even if you were in the tree when he came in. So
Yeah.
it's a great spot. Like I said, it's by itself. There's no other beds on here. You know, if it was doe bedding, there'd be more beds than this, and they wouldn't be quite this big. I want to point something out. This bed is this big around. You don't see does doing that hardly ever. You know, doe beds smaller, not quite so wore out. They're not bedding there as much as a buck is bedding in his main beds. Good example of one.
Yeah. So that bed's gonna be tough to hunt. So Heath, if you decide that you were going after this deer and this is your best opportunity to get a good shot at a good buck, how exactly are you going to go about trying to kill that buck that we found bedded on that little bench?
Well, early season, you know, you'd have to find the feed tree down below it that he was using right when he first left the bed, where he still has good cover that he felt safe right before daylight coming off that bed and coming down to. And I just don't think you could get in there near him early season as thick as it is. You know, I think that would be the only way you could do it. And sometimes they'll be bedded like that, and there'll be acorns raining down right on top of them.
Right.
And they don't even have to leave from there till dark.
Right.
You know.
Makes sense.
But if you can find that feed tree 75 yards away down the hill.
Yeah, that'd be your money.
Yeah.
Speaking of early season, I want you to talk about hunting beds the way that you and your brother have had a lot of success hunting beds. I want you to talk about that awesome hunt that you guys had. Once he explains this, guys, you got to watch this video. Link's going to be in the description. It's absolutely epic. But Heath, go through a strategy that you and your brother have had a lot of success with on these early season hunting these buck beds like this.
Okay. So if we find like a target of opportunity bed, like I guess that's the way I would explain it, you know, you maybe you run him off right then, or you notice his tracks going down the hill and you're like, okay, he was just laid up here. I mean, it's obviously he's using it right then. The way we have had some success, and it is a form of gambling, but you know, if we can find a bed like that, if you can get in really early and get around the deer, like, you know, if you're having to come through a bottom, you may bust all the deer trying to get in early. But if you can come around and find a way to get in there on that bed and get up in a tree that where your thermals are going to be dropping down into the holler beside of the point on the ridge, and he's coming back up the ridge, you know, he might come in there and lay down an hour before daylight, and your thermals are dropping down behind you. And as long as the wind don't switch around a lot, and if he don't smell you before daylight, you know, you got him at daylight. You know, he's going to stand up and walk around at some point. You're in his bedroom, you're in his bubble there, you know, and it is gambling. You know, the first couple times I tried it, I thought, oh, this is never going to work. I'm going to get busted, but it does work sometimes. So
you're talking 3-4 o'clock in the morning. You're up that tree waiting on him to come back.
Yeah, and you do need to get in there early, because last year on the buck you're talking about, we had ran the buck off, and he was using that little bedding spot. It was observational. One, he was watching the parking lot. He was watching people coming in, and two, he had acorns right there, and we had just ran him off, and I thought, well, he's bedding here right now. He's probably coming back here. Right. So I picked a tree that was just off. And even then, when it got daylight, I couldn't see him, even though I knew where he was. Yeah. You know, I had to wait 30 minutes for him to stretch his legs and get up. But they will do that in their little bubble during the daylight, you know, that 30 yards that they're going to stretch their legs at. You know, they're not going to lay in the bed all day. Yeah. They're going to stand up, ease around, moving around, and there's your opportunity. So
that's absolutely awesome. Guys, seriously, go down to the link in the description. Find that video. I'll link it right in here. That video is one of my favorite videos of all time on YouTube. That is just absolutely awesome, that strategy. Something that I really, really, really want to try in the future, and something that you should keep in mind too on these early season hunts. All right, we'll jump back in the video. So we aren't 60 yards from those other beds, 50, 60 yards. And what it is right here, it's really hard to tell. Hopefully I can splice in some topo maps. There's just a little bench right here going up the side of this ridge. You can see it's flat right there. Those other beds were just off of that side. And as you saw, there's snow on the ground. All of them were melted out. So we just had to bump those deer. Thing to keep in mind today, the wind's hitting me directly in the face right now. It's hitting Heath in the back of the head. It's coming right up this way. So what happened is today they were bedded there this morning because that was the leeward side. So they can smell, if we would have walked 50 yards, 100 yards down through there, never even walked up here, those does still would have bumped probably because they could still smell us because of the wind coming over. Also, they'd have probably thermals coming up on the other side, depending on the scenario. But what was interesting was Heath came down the other side of the bench, and there's two worn out beds right here, again, facing different directions. Hard to tell, it could be either one. Sometimes it's not as obvious as the ones we pointed out today. But the thing that we picked up on immediately was the amount of hair and the usage that was in that bed. So important stuff, and also you're gonna see big old scrape. He immediately pointed out there's three different branches that are off there and clearly well used. And terrain-wise, they're just hugging the edge, coming right across this bench, hugging the edge of this transition, going right around the hill. And if you back completely out and you follow this transition around, you're going to end up 100 yards below that bulletproof bed that we really like.
Yeah.
Heath, what would you do here? What do you think about this spot?
Well, one thing I noticed is I see a lot of scrape activity near doe bedding.
Yeah.
So that it's a hub of activity right here. So, you know, if you were gonna come in here and hunt this deer, you could probably catch him in the daylight down here.
Right.
I mean, he's got enough security cover down in here. We're only 200 yards from the bed. You know, you could probably catch him in here nudging does around near these doe bedding right here. So, well, this is a pretty good example. If you were going to hunt a scrape area,
Yeah.
this is the kind of scrape area you might catch a buck at in the daylight. He's got tons of security cover, and even if he was bedded over there where we found that bedding area, he might come down here in the middle of the day. You know, it's only 200 yards. It's thick all the way here.
Yeah.
You know,
Eyes and ears the whole way.
you know, you're talking about that scrape in Ohio. It's down in the bottom, most likely next to agriculture. You're just not going to see them down there during daylight. But right here, if I was going to scrape hunt early November, this might be a good example of a place to do it. You know.
And also, if you're into trail cameras, I know everybody ain't into them, you know, whatever. But if you're into trail cameras, this would be a killer scrape. Put it on and leave it.
Oh yeah,
for
you'd be getting a
month or
picture
two.
of whatever's bedding right
Yeah,
there.
you would know what's bedding there without having to actually get up there and get your scent all in there. And that's another thing.
So that scrape right there, I don't know about you, Heath, but that scrape's been on my mind since we came off that mountain. That one is definitely special. And even for the mountains, here in the mountains, scrapes aren't that big of a deal for us. We don't really hunt them as much as, say, somewhere in the Midwest like Ohio, but there was something special about that one. Describe that just a little bit.
Okay, yeah. Well, that scrape was right there at all that doe bedding, and the doe bedding was heavy. You know, they were bedding there all the time. They could bed there on several different winds. Right. And that's, you know, that hub of activity right there. Well, that scrape was being used year after year. You know, you could tell by how far it was dug up into the ground, and the limbs, you know, that were bitten off were as big around as your fingers, you know, hanging down. So, you know, you don't see that much. You know that it's being used and hit all the time. But what makes it perfect for killing that buck that was up in the buck bed above it is you're within 100, 150 yards of his beds, and it's super thick in there. Yeah. You know, so if he's in there, you know, he may just slip down the hill in all that security cover and come down and check that scrape in the daylight hours because it's got such good cover. And he knows the does are regularly bedding down there anyways. Yeah. So, you know, it's just one of those places, those few places in the daylight hours, those few scrapes that you're going to have a real good chance at seeing a deer on. Whereas that stuff down there near the farm fields is, you know, not a good chance you're going to see anything in the daylight down there.
Right. Yeah, it goes back to the 2 a.m. pictures. We're not looking for 2 a.m. pictures. We're looking to actually kill the buck. Right. Perfect. I'm excited about that scrape. I don't know about you, but I've thought about that scrape several times. I think that one is I think that one's a good one.
I'm just glad it ain't steep around here, you know?
Yeah, and not thick either.
No, it could be worse. It could be steep and thick.
Still down at the bottom. So he comes straight up and lays down. Well, I'm in a tree 20 yards off to the side right here, and my thermals are sucking down this hillside over here, and there was absolutely no sign of any buck coming from that direction. So I just set up perfectly that morning where it was sucking down right here, and he walked in and he spent an hour right there 20 yards from me and never winded me, you know. But he wasn't using that bed based on wind anyways. He was using that bed based on observation and because it had good food right there at that time. So, but if you can set off to the side like that, then it's a perfect spot. But up here, I just didn't see that scenario.
Did you circle way around to get on that?
I came in. Yeah, I came in from the back side, but I didn't really have to circle around that much. I came right off the roadbed, and it wasn't but 100 yards to where I was hunting from the actual roadbed. But it was perfect the way the thermals dropped off in that steep drainage to my right. You know? And all the buck sign was coming from other directions, so I figured he wasn't coming that way. You know, I mean, he could have, but he didn't.
Your belly's gonna be cold if you keep dripping water on it.
Oh yeah. Oh, it ain't cold.
Oh golly.
And that leads us to the last thing we're going to do this cutaway on: access. Probably the most important aspect of anything hunting related, definitely mountain buck hunting, is access. He talked to us a little bit about access.
All right. Well, okay. Like with me this year, access was my biggest thing in Virginia. With everybody off work this year, access is limited, you know, especially in mountain land like we hunt. There's limited pull-offs on these national forest roads and stuff. And you may have, if a man's only got 2 or 3 spots to hunt, you know, you may be denied all season because people may already be camped there or pulled over there. If you can't park there, you can't hunt there. If you can't get, unless somebody's dropping you off, you know.
Yeah.
So that is really what kept me out of my best areas this year that I was easily able to park at and camp at last year. Yeah. The access is just, it was key, man, with all these people out in the woods this year with COVID. You know, it was just the accesses were taken up and you were limited where you can hunt. So it is very important. And like the area we were in there, there's pretty much no access unless you're a private lander.
Yeah.
You know, there was no way to access that area and get to those deer in a sneaky way. You know, unless you cross the mountain and drop down from above or side hill for a long distance. It was just, it's key. And you can only side hill so far in that rough terrain before you wore out, you know? So, you know,
well, that's what I agree. Those deer, I feel like, but also by the same token, it is frustrating, but it also, you got to keep in mind, most guys will write that off, man. Most guys won't think about that. And so that's one reason I feel like the sign was pretty good in those areas. I feel like the deer and turkey numbers were pretty good because there was no parking area. There was no obvious signs and go this way and big yellow signs and everything else. But definitely that's something we run into here a lot.
It's overlooked because it doesn't have much access.
Yep. And that plays right into our hands.
Yeah.
Well, we've walked a long ways today. Found a lot of good stuff, both turkeys and deer. Way back in there, you know, the typical public land, put your stuff on your back, grit your teeth, and go, you know. But then we found the prototypical deer that all too often nobody pays attention to, nobody thinks about, and that's the buck that's 100 yards, 80 yards.
The guy that's watching you get out of your truck.
Yeah, this is literally 80 yards from my tailgate. From this bed, if you get down on his level, he can literally see this house. And this guy we know hunts. I don't know who he is, but there's a gambrel in his yard, so probably hunts. But he can literally see his house from here, see the door. And there's a ton of sign right up the edge of this field. That's where we came in at. And so this bed is plenty wore out. There's deer poop all around it. Huge scrape right behind it. And so the dude's literally watching anybody and everybody come up through here, and he's probably just chilling out laying here. And if you look geographically, not only is he covered this way, if they stop, mill around, if he gets a little bit uncomfortable for any reason whatsoever, he can take 2 steps and he's gone. It's nasty cut over, or nasty thick over here. And there's also a hollow that runs straight down. So easy escape route. And I would say that this deer probably grew up here doing this.
Yeah, and I'd say more than likely it's mature deer. You only see mature deer doing this, watching their pursuers get out of the truck, you know, every morning. So we killed a deer, me and my brother, last year that was doing the same exact thing. He was within 100 yards of our truck, and that's where we killed him at. But great example. I mean, from laying right here, his head's this height. I can see the front door of the house over there. So he can see anybody walking in. It's perfect.
Absolutely. A lot of these spots, you know, when you think about hunting public land, people message all the time, what are you looking for? What are things you're looking for? I'm looking to get away from people. That's first and foremost. I mean, I'm like anybody else. If I can get away from people 100 yards from the truck, I'm gonna get away from people 100 yards from the truck. If I have to go 2 miles, I'll go 2 miles. But again, this just shows you're not really trying the deer all over it anyway. You're really, that distance is the key is to get away from people. That's your main thing, is get away from people. And right here, you're 200 yards from a house and 100 yards from a parking area, and you know, you've got a mature buck bedding right here. So again, it's just you're getting away from people. That's the key thing.
And the coolest bed we found while we were scouting was definitely the closest to the truck. What'd you think about that one?
Well, I was shocked when we got out of the truck and there were like 30 rubs right there.
Yeah.
I was like, it kind of confused me. I was like, why would there be so much activity right here? And then when we came out that way, we popped out and that buck bed's right there. And it was a hub of activity right there.
Yeah.
You know, where they're coming down at night and I mean, they're probably hanging out right there, eating all that grass within 30 or 40 yards where that bed was. But very interesting. I've never seen a bed where they could actually see the front porch of the person that lived right there, you know, which makes me wonder. I would love to see I'd love to put a cell phone camera in a cell cam in that place and see what time of the day he's using that, you know.
Yeah.
Is that deer brave enough to be using that during the daylight hours with that farmer living right there, you know?
Well, I'm tell you one thing, from the sign in that bed, I would be shocked if he wasn't, just by the amount of sign of, you know, scat on the ground, tracks and everything else. But man, he really liked that area for whatever reason.
He could truly observe everything from there and sneak away real quickly.
Oh, I think that was the key. I think that creek was a bigger key than anything, because honestly, once he dumps off, I mean, all he's got to do is take one step and he's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, he can go up or down, and you know, nobody's going to see him.
Yeah, and he's only 30 yards in the woods. Unless he's moving his head around, you're not going to see him.
No.
You walk right by him and be looking over there in the woods, and you wouldn't see him, but he'd be watching you.
Yeah, he knows you're there. That's a fact.
Yeah.
He probably watched the same 4 guys go up through there with the climber all year.
Yeah.
No doubt.
He knows every one of them by their smell. Yeah.
Probably true. Yeah, probably true. I wonder which one he's the most scared of. Probably none of them, really.
Yeah.
Well, Heath, man, I can't thank you enough for going over there with us, you know, checking out
fun.
Stuff like that. That was a great day. It was cold, but I didn't even notice it. I learned a lot. I love getting in there. And guys, the point of this video series that we're doing, this is the first episode. There's going to be several episodes. The point is to see different aspects of trying to accomplish the same goal. I do things a little bit different. Heath does things just a little bit different. You're going to see Alan Altizer does things just a little bit different. Nathan Killen does things just a little bit different. And we're all going after the same goals. And we've all, you know, there's been plenty of success shared in the last couple of years. And so we really just want to get that information out there. And we, you know, hope you guys can glean something you like. If you haven't already, go check out Budget Bucks Outdoors. I'm going to leave a link to the video we were talking about earlier in the description, but also a link to Heath's channel. If you want to see some great mountain hunting, Heath and his brother Adam have done it all, and some really great guys, really great, you know, just down to earth country boys. And, you know, we had a great time. And Heath, again, man, I can't thank you enough for helping us out.
Yeah, anytime.
All we need to do, though, now is we just need to go put it in action. We need to go
Right.
find something this fall or spring. So, and we got that plan too. So stay tuned.
That's right.
Hope you guys enjoyed it.